Hey everyone, how's it going?
Good.
Pretty good.
Excellent.
Even better now that you're here.
Thanks. Are you excited for school to get going?
Not really.
Define excited, right?
Yeah. But it's gonna be fun. It looks like it's gonna be a fun semester, right, Justin? Hopefully Justin is still my TA. He's a good guy.
That's one way to look at it. I'm not sure it's going to be that fun, but
Great. Well, I don't know if Josh or Jude are planning to join, but I say we just get going. So this is fun. So if you remember where we left off, we were having trouble getting our boundary for our country showing up, right?
Yes, it was the JSON file, trying to get the JSON file.
That's right. Yeah, and to make it matters even more perplexing, there were no errors occurring. I guess when the final state that we left it, when we started debugging or finished debugging last time. So I spent a little time on this since we met last. And I discovered it was drawing it. Does anyone see it? It turns out there's not an island right here. I don't know if you saw that little speck, but there it is. So it wasn't throwing an error because there was no error. It was drawing it. This turns out to be a projection issue, which I had suspected, but what we did to try and remedy it didn't work last time, and I figured out how to make it work. So just to refresh everyone on where we're at, let me put a breakpoint in here. Let's say right here. I mean, we're actually console logging our GeoJSON, but let's just put a breakpoint here. So we're stopped there. You can see that we've logged our GeoJSON. We did specify a CRS property, and we used the type name and the name EPSG4326, which is WGS84, the World Geodetic System. Oh, sorry, the first one. And if we look at our, sorry, not prototype features, let me just move this up a little. We do indeed have some geometry. It's a multi-polygon, and it's got several sets of coordinates, and they're embedded in arrays. If we look at this, it looks like latitude, longitude, right? So that's correct, but it seems the thing that we're missing, if we go look at the code here, or I guess rather, first, how I discovered this is I was looking at the OpenLayers documentation for this function, read features, which is how we're reading the GeoJSON, right? We're creating a new GeoJSON format object and calling read features and giving it our GeoJSON object. And what that does is it converts it to OpenLayers features that OpenLayers can then work with. So I noticed we were giving it source, but it has options for data projection. And what's interesting is this has two projections. So data projection, you tell it what the projection of the data is in, and feature projection, you tell it what to transform it in when it writes the OpenLayers features. And the note says, if not provided, features will be returned in the data projection, which is interesting. And I guess that is what's happening. So because we're telling it its data projection is 4326, it's not transforming it, it's just returning the coordinates in 4326, but apparently the OpenLayers map doesn't do an on-the-fly projection. So we need to specify this feature projection to match the map projection so that it will reproject it to what the map expects. It's a little convoluted. So the way this works, notice this says options. Anytime you see in the documentation something like this where it takes an options object with some kind of keys and values, what you do is you just provide a JSON object, which looks like a Python dictionary with the options in it. So I'll give it the data projection. And you can, if you look at what this takes, it takes a projection like. And a projection like is one of these projection objects or an SRS identifier string or undefined. So we can just provide the string 3857 is the native projection of OpenLayers maps. And again, that's the, I think we pulled it up. It's a Mercator system. A web Mercator, I think is what they call it. And it's not happy about something. Got my comma there. Oh, sorry. This needs to be not an argument to vector, but an argument to read features. There we go. Okay. Let's refresh that. So I did this initially because it said that it would take the string, but that didn't work for me, but I wanted to show you that. So what I ended up doing that did work is I did ol.proj, and it has a get method. Get, which will get a projection object from one of these strings. Let's try that. And now it's not working because we're doing it live. Data projection, did I misspell that? You know what? I'm going to go ahead and be explicit and specify the other option here in the API. Oh, data projection. I need to provide feature projection. Sorry. Feature projection is 3857. Okay. There it is. Woohoo. You got it. So yeah, that might have been a little confusing. So just to review, there are two projections you can provide when you're reading from GeoJSON. One is the projection that the data is provided in, and the other is the projection that you're projecting it to when you create the open layer features, the feature projection. So we had to specify the second one. Now it's probably safe to be explicit and go ahead and specify the data projection here as well. I mean, it is safer to be explicit. In fact, if you are familiar, if you remember the Zen of Python from the Python course, one of the items there is explicit is better than implicit. Anyway, so I would, if this is me doing this, and right now it is, I would probably specify both, just so that it's clear that we're specifying that the data is coming in this way from the GeoJSON and it's being transformed to this one when creating the open layers features. Any questions on that? Okay. This border is a little hard to see. I remember we were just using the default style for multi-polygon that we got off of the example, open layers example, which has a width of 1 and it's yellow. With this base map, that's not the easiest to see. So I'm going to change our styles now that we have it rendering. I'm going to change it to red and do a width of 3, maybe. And then the fill, I forgot to talk about the colors you can specify. These are just CSS colors. So there's a few different ways you can specify colors in open layers. RGB and RGBA are similar. The difference is you specify the A, which is the, not opacity, what is it? The word is escaping me. So basically how transparent it is. Ah, man, that word. I have to look it up because it's bugging me. RGBA. So red, green, blue, alpha channel, which specifies your transparency. So, and 255 on the R and the B, or sorry, the R and the G gives you yellow. So this is a yellow color with 10% opacity, I guess is the way to say it. So I'm going to just change it to red, fully red. Yeah, we'll stick with 10% so that we don't obscure too much what's going on there. And now we can see that really nicely. So the other thing that's a little annoying that we should fix is right now, it's zooming just to whatever the default is from the example. I want it to zoom in on France. So I Googled center of France, Latlon, and got this. So let's just come down here to where we're specifying our initial view inside the map. And the only trick here is we're using from lon lat, so we need to reverse these. Okay. And remember that if it's degrees west, you'll need to provide a negative number, or if it's degrees south, you'll need to provide a negative number. Okay, so let's look at that. There we go. Now we're centering in on France. We're zoomed out maybe more than I want to be. So maybe we'll adjust the zoom. Let's just try, well, this is what we can do. We know we're at 4. So I can just click this once. This will be 5. 6. Let's try 6. So each time you click, the zoom button is going in another zoom level. There you go. Wonderful. So now we're getting somewhere. So that takes care of the requirement that we had. If we go back to our README, which, oh yeah, I was just scrolled down. So we've added the base map. We found the GeoJSON boundary. And remember, we actually ended up, initially we had downloaded that and tried to serve it locally. But because of restrictions with the GetJSON API, we ended up just referencing directly from the Data Hub IO website. And that gave us the full data set, not our subsetted France data set. So we had to go ahead and loop through that. So it's in the last video. Just review that if in terms of how to get the data. So now we've got that added on. And actually, it was very instructive that we had that problem with the projection because that happens frequently. So now you know that that can happen, and you'll know to look for little teeny tiny specks on your map. So the next thing is to add the Esri Ecmwf Geoglose Streamflow map service. Okay, this will be similar to what we did before, where we added the tile layer, the XYZ source from Esri, but it's going to be a different type of source. So first of all, let's take a look at this service here. I'll just move this over here with our other one. So just like our base map service, this is an ArcGIS server. It's a map server. We can tell by the URL. It also says map server right here, as opposed to a feature server. And so that means that we're going to be using probably an image or a tile source, as opposed to a feature source in OpenLayers. If we look at the other link that was provided in the instructions, I think this shows us what this service looks like. Oh, this is the link on the ArcGIS. What do you call this? Living Atlas. Okay. So if you have data that's on Living Atlas or like an Esri enterprise server, you may have a page like this that's kind of a summary of the service. Usually they have a link here where it says URL to the map server. And you can either copy it or you can just view it, and it will bring you to this page that we were looking at before. So that's kind of two different ways that you end up getting to Esri servers when you're using these services. So let's go ahead and go back to our OpenLayers examples. And let's just look for the map server example. Last time we looked at the XYZ service. So we want to do, there's an image and there's an ArcGIS map, or a tiled version of the ArcGIS map server. So I'm going to go with the tiled one because the tiled layer, you see how it loaded it in blocks. The tiled services are going to render more efficiently because you're essentially chunks up the image into smaller images and then transfers them all at the same time in parallel, instead of having to load a larger image, which would be slower all at once. Okay, so from their example here, it looks like they've got their URL here and it looks similar to ours. It ends in map server and it's got the layer name. And then down here, they're creating a tile layer using a tile ArcGIS REST source. So let me copy that into our code. And I'm going to say, let's put this in between our vector layer and our base map so that the vector layer ends up being on top. And I'm going to make that indented 4 spaces. Now, I'm going to get rid of extent because I think the extent of this is global. I mean, we could provide, well, I'm not going to worry about it. It should be able to figure that out on its own. We need to fix our import, if you recall, because this is using the module type imports. We need to turn it into the global scope type imports. So we'll do ol.source.tile ArcGIS REST. So that should be fine. And then tile layer should just be OL layer tile, just like we have here. Let me just grab that. Okay, and then we need to specify our URL. And we probably should do some attribution as well. So let's grab our URL here. Okay, and I'm just going to break this just like we did before. Just to make it a little easier to read. And then let's add some attribution. Just like we did here. The attribution, I don't know if you noticed, there's this little I info button that shows up on the open layers. Interesting, the @ symbol didn't come through. But it just shows here. In fact, I don't love that there. So maybe we'll fix that too. But so what we need to do is replace this URL actually with our URL. And that ended up working because we're using single quotes. So let's, instead of tiles, oh, it's a copyright symbol. Interesting. Why is it look so weird? So I think what we're going to do is just say Geoglose Ecmwf Streamflow prediction service. And then by ArcGIS maybe, and we'll have the link to it. In fact, maybe we'll just do this. We'll just make the whole thing a link, and it will be a little prettier, I think. Okay, let's, oops, drop this down. Maybe a little convoluted, but okay, let's look at that one, see how that attribution comes through. This is just to make sure that we're giving credit to the service providers. It's not great how it just puts those together like that, is it? So let's fix this one while we're at it. Let's call it the world I thought I had the National Geographic. Oh, I do. Nat Geo World Map by ArcGIS. Just get rid of this, and then I need to fix that link, don't I? Just this part. And that will make this attribution string really long, which is less than ideal. Oops. I'm going to make this verbose. Geographic. Anyone else read National Geographic magazines? I love looking at those when I was growing up. Maybe that's aging myself. Okay, and something we can do to hack this is we could just add a break tag here. And that should, well, hopefully it works. Let's see. Yeah, that works. So now they're at least on separate lines. Okay, and again, this just gives attribution of the layers that you're showing on here. I mean, we probably want to do attribution of our vector layer as well. But I'll leave that up to you to do add attribution. Since that isn't our data, we pulled it off of this data hub. So there we go. And notice we now have streams on our map. You probably noticed a while ago because I wasn't paying attention. Let's see if there's any areas that are hotspots. France. We got places all over.
That's true.
I mean, the US does too. We're just not as upfront about it. So yeah, there's a little bit of activity going on here. Ghana and I can't read that. The Ivory Coast. Great. So we've got that showing up. What else was left in our README? Okay, so I think that takes care of the map part of it. So the next thing we have is include a plot using one of the plotting libraries discussed in the web visualization course. By the way, we got France showing, Jude. You probably noticed.
Yes, it's beautiful.
It
Best
turns out
country.
it was showing all the time. It was just like a little speck off the coast of Africa here because it was the wrong projection.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know. Oh, look, there's some stuff going on in China. What's happening in China? So notice that since we're using this ArcGIS service, it automatically is doing handling the zoom level and density network, the network density scaling, which helps it to render a lot faster. So as you zoom in, you see a lot more detail. And then when you zoom out, you only see the larger rivers. So that's an optimization for creating layers if you ever are needing to do that. That is provided by at least ArcGIS type services. Okay, so include a plot library. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make a place for our plot. Since we went with the option to do full screen map, we're not left with a whole lot of options here. So I think what we're going to do, let's see. Doesn't this have a requirement to show? Include a plot, use Ajax. Did we have a requirement for Bootstrap? I thought we did. Use Bootstrap to create a simple layout. Since
Yes,
we went
we
full screen, we didn't really do that. But let's use Bootstrap to create a modal. Sorry, did you say something, Lucky, or
I was
just?
just saying we did have a Bootstrap, but when you created your HTML initially, you just didn't, like, you just went the traditional way.
Yeah, it's true. I cheated. But that's okay. We're going to use Bootstrap now, and we can add a header on after the fact. So let's see. They have out currently version 5. I have not used version 5, so this will be fun. Tethys currently comes with version 3, so we need to update. It's not a straightforward thing, so I have an idea of how to do it, but we haven't done it yet. So let's go to their get started. This is live. It's not even beta. Last time I saw version 5 was beta. So this is hot off the press, I think. So first we need to add the CSS to our web page. So we'll go to our index.html. And I think I'll just put this right under the open layers one, but I'm keeping it our main.css after any of the third-party CSS, and that's to allow us to override any styles that we may want to do. Because in consistency, I'm just going to move this over here too. Can't tell I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. It's a problem. Yeah, so in terms of CSS priority, if you have two rules that select the same features, the one that is further down on a single sheet is going to take precedence. And the sheet that is further down in the HTML document is going to take precedence over the ones above. So having your CSS below all of the third-party CSS allows you to then override it. Okay. And then we'll grab this, I guess, bundle, or you could do separate. I guess it requires popper. I don't know what popper is. And we'll just put this one under here. And again, with JavaScript, if you are using the global import mechanism, then you'll want your JavaScript to be below everything else that you're using so that they are loaded and ready for you to use. So ours is specified down here in the body so that it's run even after all the page content. Okay, so that's a little review. So now we have Bootstrap. Let's go take a look at their documentation. And I think it'll probably be in components. Let's look at their modal. Okay. So how it works. Menu options have recently changed. Clicking the modal backdrop will automatically close the modal. Imagine that. Only one modal at a time. Okay. Well, let's look at their example. It's a nice, simple modal. So what I'm going to do, oh, they have these copy buttons now. That's nice. I'll just copy the HTML for the modal. And I'm just going to put it, oops, above our script, but below our map. Now, the modal, I believe, should be hidden by default. Guess we will find out. So the other piece of a modal is a button. Nice. So we need to place a button somewhere. This will be a little tricky because we don't really have a lot of places on our map. But let's go ahead and put it on our page and see what happens. I want to not do that inside of the modal. Guessing what's going to happen, okay, is that it will probably render underneath our map and then we'll have a scroll bar, something like that. But we'll fix that. So the way that these work is you use this data BS target, BS for Bootstrap, not whatever Justin was thinking. And you give it the ID of the modal that you want it to open. So since I copied those from two different examples, maybe that wasn't the best. Class modal. I think I just need to add an example, an ID. And I'll just stick with example modal for now. I'm going to change all this as we go on. Well, let's look at what we got. Yep, scroll bar. There's our button. Here's our modal. Okay. So before we style that, let's fix some of these things. And let me do this. I'm going to add a comment. To kind of let us know where everything is. So this is the plot modal. And this one's maybe a little obvious, but we'll just put this here as well. Map. And since this one's really long and HTML is kind of hard to read sometimes, let's put a end plot modal. Or sometimes you'll see people just put like a slash, close plot modal. Okay. So first of all, I don't like that ID. I'm going to call it plot modal. Ugh. I hate using camel case in Java in HTML though. So we'll do that. That was too much. Okay, modal dialog, modal content, modal header. These are all Bootstrap things, so you don't really want to change them. Modal, that's what adds the style, but we're going to say plot, modal, or just plot. We don't need to say modal. That's fine for now. We'll change the content. And we don't really need a save because we're just going to open it up and close it. Technically, we probably don't need a close button, but let's leave it there for now. Okay, and then we'll just change the text on the button to be plot. Notice this is an HTML element called button, type button. And we're using these classes, these Bootstrap classes to style it. And then adding these things to make it a modal opening button. Okay, still works. We didn't break it, so that's good. Let's go ahead and move this button though. So we're going to go into CSS and we're going to select, oh, it doesn't have an ID. Let's give our button an ID so it's easier to select. ID equals plot modal button. Okay. So we'll need to reference that in our CSS. So we'll just drop in here and use the hashtag to indicate we're selecting an ID. And rather than try and guess at this, what I'm going to do is actually use the development tools. This is a better way to do CSS, in my opinion. Instead of having to guess, save, reload, and keep doing that again, you can edit styles using the tools here and then copy them over. So if we look at our button right now, it's getting some styles from Bootstrap for primary, button, and button. Let me try refreshing. Oh, I have a breakpoint there when I was debugging that. And right click on the button again and inspect it. Yeah, and you can see that our empty style is showing here now from our main.css. So what I want to do is I want to change its position to absolute. I think so. What's its display right now? Display block. Position absolute. Because I just changed that. Okay, and then I want to say top. Let's say 10 pixels and right. Let's say, or yeah, from the right 10 pixels. Okay, so I don't know if you remember from the class where we were talking about HTML and CSS, but position absolute will remove it from whatever context it was in before, and then you can specify its position relative to its container. So now instead of rendering at its default location after the map, it's now rendering here at the top. What is going on? Oh, is that just the, no, what is going on there? There we go. Okay, so now our plot button is just showing up here in the top right. But remember, these changes are temporary until I put them in my CSS file. So you got to remember to copy them over. So now I'm going to do a hard refresh, Control-Shift-R. Whenever you're doing CSS, you should always do hard refreshes so that you don't end up with cached versions. Okay, now our plot button's there. That color's not especially easy to see. Other colors. Layout. Content. Typography. Now, I'm trying to remember where they talk about colors. Let's just go look at it. I guess what we can do is just go look at the button component and probably talk about it. Here we go. Danger, warning. I don't know. I'm feeling dangerous. So let's do danger. So as you see in the examples here, it shows you the different classes for the different colors. So we'll go here instead of button primary, which is making it blue, we'll do danger. Should make it red. There's ways when you download Bootstrap, I think you can customize it. So you can give it your own color scheme. So this is the default scheme, which is pretty generic. But they have a way that you can essentially regenerate the CSS with your own theme. I'm trying to think. Can't remember. They used to anyway. I don't know if they still do. So that you don't have to manually do it. Okay, so we have a place for our plot. Let's make it bigger though. So let's inspect this. It's our modal. Modal dialog. So maybe we'll do plot modal dialog. plot modal dot, because it's a class modal dialog. So again, I'm selecting an element with an ID of plot modal, actually an element inside of an element with an ID of plot modal that has the class modal dialog. So if you look at our structure here, here's ID plot modal, and inside of it is modal dialog. Okay. And then let's set our width to, I want this to take up more room, 90%. Maybe. How is it doing its width right now? Oh, max width. There we go. So I don't even need width. I just need to override max width to allow it to get wider. And then the height, I believe, will just be whatever the content is. So that'll make it so our plot takes up more room on our website. So let's add that max width 90%. Okay, excellent. Let's go in our HTML. We have our modal body here. I'm going to put a div in there to contain our plot. Div ID plot wrapper. And that's what we'll select in our JavaScript. Well, that's where we'll put the element that we select to put our plot in. Okay, so let's do plotly plot. Let me remind myself what. Include a plot using one of the plotting libraries discussed in the web visualization course. Use one of the AJAX methods to query the Ecmwf Geoglose Streamflow API for a river in your country and plot it. Okay. So I think what we'll do is we'll just start with one of Plotly's examples for like a line chart. Yeah, this one looks great. Let's see. Looking for one that maybe has titles. There we go. Although that's points, but because they set the show line to false. Well, we can add those later. I'm just going to go up with the basic one. Okay, main.js. I think what I'm going to do actually is create a create a new function for this that we'll call create plot. For yeah. Oops. Dude. Ah, but I forgot something. Does anyone know what I forgot? This is for extra credit. Just kidding. I have no extra credit powers. We're just going to reduce that to the single trace. I forgot to add the libraries for Plotly. So, yeah, I didn't want to go to Plotly. I want Plotly.js. Getting started. CDN. 2.3.1 is what we're on. Okay, so we'll go in here and add this right after our other one. Okay, we're not actually drawing that plot yet. So I think what I want to do is I want it to draw the plot when we click on the button, when the modal, after the modal opens, basically, so that we have a better chance of it rendering properly. So now that I close Bootstrap, let's open it again. Oops. Go to Docs, Components, Modal, where we were before. And what we want to look at via JavaScript. Methods, hide, show. So you can actually trigger it to hide and show with JavaScript. Events, the very last one is what I want. So Bootstrap's kind enough to fire events for various events during the modal life cycle. So for example, when it's showing, so it's immediately when you click on it, click on the button and it starts to show, they'll fire show. And when it's done showing, so once it's made visible, they'll fire this event shown. So I want to do this one. Add event listener. Okay, so we select the element and then we add an event listener to it. This is using the native JavaScript API for selecting and adding. We are using jQuery though, so I can show you what the equivalent of jQuery is. So I'm going to put this in after our get JSON. What we're going to do is select our modal, which we call plot modal, I believe. So this very top level element, so plot modal dot on. Oops. And we're going to use that. What was it? Shown BS modal. So this is another common pattern for programming in JavaScript is responding to events. And the way, at least it works, well, the way it works in both jQuery and the native is you specify the event you want to trap on, and then you give it a function to call, so callback function when that event occurs. And it will pass an event object to that function. She'll have information about the event. Okay. In this case, what I want it to do is I want it to create the plot. Create plot. And let's see, one way, well, we don't have this yet, so let me comment this out. Well, why not? Let's just call this plot. And then go back into our HTML. So we need to give it a target. So in our modal, create or our plot wrapper, I'll create another div with an ID equal to plot. Okay, so that's what Plotly will target to draw the plot. And it should occur after the modal is shown. Okay, so let's try this. Huzzah, it worked. So that's pretty cool. I wonder what it does. So I'm going to modify this slightly. Okay, so Plotly, I don't know if you remember, but there are different functions we can use. Where's the Plotly function? There, here it is, the function reference. So we're using, I think, new plot right now. Yeah, new plot, which is fine. It will override it if it already exists. But notice this note, to update an existing plot in a div, it is much more efficient to use Plotly React than to override it. Okay, so I'm gonna look at Plotly React. It has the same signature as Plotly New. Can be used in its place to create a plot, but when called again on the same div, will update it far more efficiently. So I'm going to change this from new plot to React, since it's going to get called every time we open that modal. Obviously, it's pretty efficient with these 4 points, so it's not significant now, but it might be in the future. Okay, so we have a plot, and now that I'm seeing it, we really don't need that close button at the bottom. So I'm going to get rid of the footer in our modal. Hopefully that won't mess up the styles too bad. Yeah, it's fine. Bootstrap is smart. So now it's just all plot. We can close it with the X or clicking off it. Great. So we've got a plot. However, it's just using hard-coded data. What we'd like to do is use the API here. We can go to the REST API documentation and pull off some data, whether it be historic. Probably what we want to do is get the forecast stats, return statistic calculated from 51 forecast ensemble members. Successful response will return a time series with date pair values. Okay, it can take a reach ID, or it can take a latitude and longitude and the given date. If left blank, it defaults to the most recent date. Okay, so that's nice. Return format. Oh, default is CSV. Let's see, let's try it out. We need a reach ID or lat long, but I'm going to go with reach ID. And one way to ascertain the reach ID is to go here. What's the biggest river in France? Is it the Rhone?
Is it not the Seine?
Where is the Seine?
It runs right through Paris. But I don't know if it's the biggest. It's just the one I know.
I don't know. The Rhone looks bigger. Is that in France or is that?
Looks like it is.
Let's do the Seine though, because this is the famous one, right? Should we do the Seine in Paris?
Probs.
See if Notre Dame's gonna get flooded. Oh, where did it go? Oh, here it is. Okay, so there's the reach ID. 120408113. 120408113. Did I get that right? And that actually is a somewhat interesting result. Okay, and I want JSON format. Execute. There you go. So there's our time series. And let's see, high res, date time. Oh, I guess the high res is separate, huh? Oh, the high res has a different time series. That's why, because it changes, the time step changes. Flow 25%, perfect. Flow 75%. This is gonna be perfect. Okay. Okay, so let's add this query to our hello JavaScript. There you are. Okay, so I'm going to create another function. Well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it in here. I'm just going to call get JSON in here. Yeah. And remember, this is asynchronous, so I can't just expect it to return something immediately. So we're gonna have to deal with that. So notice this try me gave us the URL, which is nice. It does use get. So I think if you're using one that wasn't using get JSON wouldn't work. Because well, maybe it can. Maybe you can specify the method. Unknown. Okay. And then we could give it a function. What did our last one return? It just returned the GeoJSON. So this is, we'll assume it's going to return the JSON. Okay, and then we'll have it do stuff after it returns the JSON. And what we want it to do is draw our plot. So we'll just move all of that inside of the callback for get JSON. Okay. Let's just do a log or console log JSON so we can inspect it. And then we'll come in here. Our console. So it took a little while to load. We're going to want to do something to provide feedback to our users so they don't think it's broken. But here's our data. So we've got time series is where the data is at. So it gives us kind of a summary, beginning, end date, and the region. And then we can get our different series here. So let's add some series. And I think we should just, since it's already in JSON format, we should just be able to add these fairly easily. So let's call this flow 25. And we give it an object. We need to give it an X. And that's going to be our JSON.time series dot date time JSON.time series dot flow. Ooh, has a % symbol in it. That's interesting. And a caret. I don't know if JavaScript will love that. So I think what we have to do is we have to specify this using the string, the get attribute syntax like this, because I don't think % and caret symbols or slash symbols for that matter are acceptable JavaScript delimiters or in names of JavaScript things. Okay, and then we ought to give it type scatter. Okay, let's just add 2 more. Let's add our flow 75 and our average. So we just need to change that to 75. And our average. And change this to flow average. Okay, there's some other things we could do to add titles and stuff like that, but that will do for now. Let me expand this a little bit. Okay, again, it's taking a little while. There you go. That looks pretty good. So what we want to do, we don't want these to say trace 0, 1, 2. That's not ideal. So let's give our series some names. Does that look pretty close, by the way? I think it's these middle ones that it's plotting. Yeah. So let's make it so that it kind of looks like this, where we've got the area filled between the 25 and 75 and use dashes. Yeah, and get our legend to show properly. So for that, did I close Plotly? Man. Or did I I probably replaced it. Plotly, JS scatter. Line charts. Okay, and some of these, it's showing how to do different things. There's one that shows everything we want to do. Okay, this has the dot and the names, or the dash. So let's look at that. Lines plus markers, interesting. I'm not convinced that this is. Oh, it's this one above. Okay, goodness, sorry. Okay, so we just need to give it a name. That's easy. And then line, give it an object with a dash and a width. Okay, so let's start with that. So name, dash and a width. Mode, lines. Interesting, they just do mode lines instead of type scatter. Okay, so name. This is our, I'm just going to steal the names off of here. Oh, they combine them. Okay, I can show you how to do that. But for now, let's just do 25% flow. one up here. 75. We'll add one here. That is average. Okay. And then let's get our line. What was it? Line dash and width. Dash. Dash one. I don't know. I know dot is one. Let's just do 3. So 75 and 25 will be dash, but we'll make average solid. Okay, I think we can do color. Specify the color on the lines too. Oh, you could do a gap. No. Scatter styling. Yeah, here we go. Color. That's markers. Line takes color too. We can just do RGB. So I want these two to be the same color. I want this one to be a different color. So let's just make this one red. So RGB. So red is just full 100% or 255 R. For simplicity, let's just make these. It's going to be pretty bright, but we can take it. Okay. Now let's refresh that. Plot. There you go. If we wanted better colors, we could just go RGB color picker. Like a darker green. 0, 158. Okay. I think that looks good. Okay, now fill between. I think there's a different, let's see. Let's do Plotly JS fill between. Filled area plots. This one I didn't realize, but this one is showing it. So it's filled between 1 to 0, orange, to 0. So if you want to fill to 0, like the blue one, you can use 2, 0, or you can do 2 next Y. So if we do fill 2 next Y, then it will fill to the next series. So in this case, we put it on 25% because the next one is 75. Let's just make sure that worked. I don't know what fill color is going to be. Dang it, that didn't work. Oh. I miss. Let's try it on this one. The question is it going to fill it to our average? I think it might, so we might have to put it on both. Oh, that worked for some reason. Not entirely certain why. Okay, and so notice that the shaded region showing up on this one, the one that we put the fill to next Y on, the 75%. So a trick that we can do is we can change its name 25% to 75%, and then hide the legend for this one. And then what we'll do is actually give them both the same name, so that when we hover over it, they'll both show the 25 to 75%, which maybe is a little confusing. There is a way to have the legend name be different, actually. So if we wanted to keep the names the same, then what we can do is change the legend name. I think, let's see. Let's see if we can find the API reference. The year reference? Yeah, layout. Let's look at scatter, because that's the type of figure that we're working with. Show legend, so that's one thing I'm looking for. So let's put on 25% show legend false, so that it will hide. And legend oops. There's a way, I know. I just did it. Legend rank, show legend, visible, name, type. Okay, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna look over some of my other code. I'm gonna cheat. Public JS. Oh, that's what I did. I changed the hover template. Okay, so I'm going to change the name then. 25%. Yeah. And then this one you could do just kind of indicate that they're being used graphically the same. It's still showing that legend. Show legend. Oh, lowercase l. They don't want you to be able to read it. Okay, there we go. So now it looks like we just have an array filled series and then this one. So there's some other cool stuff with that you can do with Plotly. This hover template that I mentioned. So you can control what shows up when you hover over these things, and that's kind of how I got it to hover. So 25% flow, and then That's the units. Meters cubed per second. Or you know what? Let's just do CMS. Why are we doing this weird stuff? Oops. Right. Okay. And this is just saying that it's a float and we're rounding off, I think, to one significant digit there. So I'll show you before I put the other one in, I'll show you what the difference is. So now when I hover over this one, notice how it's got a little nicer pop-up. I'm not showing the date though. Maybe we should show the date. This one shows the date. So we could do, I don't know, at %x, which is our date. On, maybe. Okay, I'm actually gonna just do that. Style, because that's what we've been doing. So let's do this for 75% so it shows up correctly or similarly, and we'll do it on average. Okay, we need to add some, I don't have much more time, but we need to add some legend titles or some titles on the axes. Yeah, it's a little verbose, but that's okay. Okay. So let's start messing with some layout options so that we can get our axes titles. Layout. Okay, and you just give this as the third argument after data to React or new plot. Okay, and we're gonna do really quick x-axis. I'm looking at some other code to draw on this, but you'd find this in the documentation for layout. And the x-axis will do type is date. Then it will kind of format dates. We can control the tick format and things like that. Yeah, I think we'll just do that. Then we'll do y-axis. I guess we need to give it a title. What am I thinking? Let's see, title, text, and call this Streamflow CMS. I think date is self-explanatory when you see dates, so I guess we don't necessarily need to give it a name. You'll just see the date. Now, if we wanted to control our frequency, so right now it's showing what, day? But our data is like every 6 hours or something like that. So what we can do is we can specify the option dtick, as in like tick delta, and it uses the ISO 8601, I think, format. So we could say hour 6, every 6 hours. See if that works. Interesting. Guess we weren't showing every day before. But 6 hours might be too much, so maybe we'll just leave it at that. So let's maybe say 1 day. So our future selves don't think, wait, why is it not showing 6 hours? Do you know you can slide these in Plotly? That's why you have this reset axes button. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about that. Let's change this title to be something more descriptive. How do you spell sen? Something like that. And then we'll put the reach ID. One, 2, 0, 4, 0, 8, 1, 3. Is the I before the E? I don't remember. This isn't showing river names. Come on, do National Geographic. Do we have the wrong river? There's the Marne. The Marne. The Marne. I don't know.
I think it would be Marne. Yeah.
Marne.
Marne.
Oh, Seine Saint Denis.
Saint Denis. Saint Denis.
Seine Saint Denis. So did I spell it right?
Seine. Yes.
Okay. Okay. I think that's as far as we're going to go because I've got to jump on another meeting in 5 minutes. But
Thank you so much, Nathan.
hopefully this was helpful.
I'll probably be referring to these videos several times.
Yeah. Be sure to send out the video.
I will.
And
I wonder if we should I don't know.
put them in the course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
I think the lab still has a YouTube channel somewhere too, if you wanted to.
Yeah, that'd just be good to have as reference in more places than just the random Google Doc I have for all the meetings.
Yes, that's a good idea. We should put them on the Tethys platform YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Can you download the videos or does it just play in a streamer?
I'm not sure. I'll see what when Dr. Nelson sends me the recording, I'll see what I can do.
Okay, if you can get me the video files, then I can post them to the YouTube channel.
Sounds good. I'm sure if I can't, then Dr. Nelson can, so we'll figure it out.
Okay, we're just going to commit these and push these to that same GitHub repository so that you can see the code. Fixed map and added plot. Yay. Okay, all right. I will talk to you all later.
Thank you.